Highly intelligent, rational professionals often optimize their workflows down to the minute. They build immaculate systems for their week. Yet, when the exact moment arrives to perform the work, they frequently fail to execute their own meticulously designed plans. Standard time management frameworks rely on the assumption that humans are perfectly rational actors. The moment internal emotional states enter the equation, schedules and task managers immediately break down. Cultural narratives typically frame task avoidance as a moral failing or a definitive flaw in character. This leads to solutions based entirely on shame and sheer willpower. We are going to discard those narratives. In this model, procrastination is treated as an engineering challenge, a mechanical failure within a biological system. Because procrastination is a structural failure of our operating system, brute forcing more willpower is highly inefficient. Resolving the breakdown requires engineering a completely new behavioral architecture. To build that architecture, we have to look past external scheduling tools and examine the underlying hardware, human neuroanatomy operating under stress. Dr. Fuschia Sirois' research defines procrastination as a struggle with immediate emotional regulation. Highlighted in blue, the prefrontal cortex calculates long-term utility and rational goals. But high-stress tasks trigger the limbic system, shown in red, which demands immediate mood repair. This fear response activates within milliseconds, faster than logical projection, resulting in a systemic neurological override. Procrastination is the brain successfully executing a survival-based program. It identifies a stressor and resolves it by avoiding the task to achieve immediate emotional relief. The specific triggers for this limbic hijack are the negative emotions tied to the work itself. Feelings of boredom, inadequacy, or anxiety are the precise inputs that launch the avoidance protocol. An effective productivity system must be designed to mathematically bypass limbic resistance, rather than engaging it in a direct fight. We model this bypass using chemical thermodynamics. This reaction coordinate graph demonstrates activation energy. Mapping our biology here, the starting state is the procrastinating individual. The end state is task completion. The massive hurdle between them is limbic friction. Common productivity advice tells people facing this massive hurdle to just start. To just start is neurobiologically difficult because it demands an immediate, massive expenditure of executive function to climb the energy curve, a resource that an overloaded limbic system cannot currently provide. The immutable law of this thermodynamic model states that a behavioral reaction cannot occur until you introduce structural catalysts that alter the required energy threshold. This prompts a diagnostic question. Are you avoiding the actual physical mechanics of a pending task, or are you avoiding the specific negative emotion you associate with it? Because a human cannot spontaneously generate more internal energy to clear a high hurdle, we must engineer interventions that alter the shape of the graph itself. The first systemic intervention utilizes the behavioral research of B.J. Fogg, altering the baseline thermodynamics of a task through structural environment staging. Systematically removing physical and cognitive friction points from your workspace directly subtracts from the total activation energy required to begin working. The 2-minute rule functions as a structural catalyst. Committing to a micro-step physically compresses the friction peak. Aggressive environment staging establishes a lower energy pathway, eliminating the decision fatigue that triggers the limbic system. The goal of this intervention is to reduce initial friction so severely that achieving the action potential becomes effectively automatic. By ensuring the environment requires minimal executive function to navigate, the limbic system never detects enough friction to trigger a protective hijack. The second intervention bypasses real-time choices by utilizing Peter Gallwitzer's framework of pre-computed decisions. Gallwitzer defines this as implementation intentions, relying on a strict algorithmic heuristic. When X happens, I will do Y. Connecting to Piers Steel's procrastination equation, this flowchart inserts an if-then logic gate explicitly before the main reaction curve. Watch it route the data packet cleanly around the red decision nodes, where execution usually fails, transferring the computational burden entirely onto external triggers. Instead of a vague, high-friction goal like, I will study today, you lock in an algorithmic trigger. If it is 9 a.m. and my coffee is poured, Then I will open the analytics report. This creates a behavioral forced function. Because the decision was computed in the past, the execution operates independent of your current motivation or mood. Implementation intentions strip the cognitive load from the task, turning conscious choices into low-friction neurological reflexes. The final mechanical patch manipulates reward pathways using Katy Milkman's concept of temptation bundling. Coupling a highly aversive task with a restricted, high dopamine reward physically alters the math. It raises the baseline energy of the starting state high enough to clear the remaining hurdle. This targeted dopamine injection appeases the limbic system's demand for mood repair during task execution, neutralizing the biological conflict. However, there is a diagnostic boundary here, rooted in Dr. Russell Barkley's research on executive dysfunction. If these structural systems continuously fail, it may signal neurodevelopmental origins. Conditions like ADHD or clinical anxiety represent barriers where PFC signaling is chronically inhibited. Recognizing the boundary between a standard system's failure and a chronic hardware issue is critical to applying the correct clinical intervention. Overcoming task avoidance requires finalizing these 3 mechanical interventions into a single structure. This diagram represents the complete anti-procrastination architecture. First, the staged environment physically flattens the friction curve. Second, implementation intentions attach as an automated routing system, preventing the cognitive drain of real-time decisions. Finally, temptation bundling locks in, powering movement over the remaining curve. By externalizing the execution process into this architecture, we bypass the volatile resource of human willpower. Task avoidance is a biological friction problem requiring an engineering solution. Deploying these structural systems successfully decouples your consistent physical output from the unpredictable fluctuations of your temporary emotional state. Isolate exactly one high-friction task today. Map out its friction points and engineer a single if-then algorithm to execute it. For deeper models of behavioral mechanics and system design, subscribe to Inside Engine. Optimized behavioral systems will universally outlast fleeting waves of motivation. Build the architecture.